So this is a question from the Beneath and Beyond card set. And the question is two questions in one. What are some of your greatest fears, and is fear necessarily bad? I'll answer the second question first. I think fear is just fear. And I think there are times fears can be founded or unfounded, but I think ultimately they're just fear. And I thought the book that was written, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, The Gift of Fear, was really interesting to tell us to not discount our fears, that our fears can sometimes be the sort of unconscious summation of clues, or the summation of clues which we are unconsciously picking up, but we've not yet been able to bring to the level of awareness, which doesn't alter the fact that there are times that we can experience fears that are not, that inhibit our abilities to live life fully for sometimes no good reasons. And I was thinking of an example about this a couple of days ago, that for whatever reason, I was thinking of hammocks. Actually, I was thinking of sleeping positions and how I usually sleep on my side or stomach. And then I thought of, we had hammocks when I was a kid, and I tried taking some naps in those, but of course you got to lie on your back. And then one time when I was camping, I thought it'd be really cool to tie a hammock. I was probably 9 or 10. I thought it'd be really cool to tie a hammock between trees. But then I was worried about falling out during the night. So I slept in the hammock between trees, and I was with my sister and her husband. And to make it so I wouldn't fall out of the hammock, my sister's husband tied the top of the hammock closed. So I'm in there like a little cocoon, and everything's fine so far. And then they go back to the tent, and then I hear a sound in the forest somewhere away. And of course I'm tied into my hammock. And I spend much of the rest of the night absolutely convinced that a bear is going to come, and I won't be able to get away because I'm tied into my hammock, and a bear is going to and of course nothing happened. I mean, probably it was a raccoon 100 yards away. And yeah, I mean, even if it would have been a bear, there's only one person dies in North America every 2 years from a bear attack, which is not what I was thinking at 9 years old, tied into a hammock between two trees. I was like, I am basically I'm basically a nice little human sausage just waiting for some predator to come by and unwrap the casing. And so that was a case of a fear that inhibited my ability to get a good night's sleep, that was unfounded. And we can all come up with times that we have. I mean, I remember watching Creature Features when I was a kid. It was every Saturday night they would have scary movies. Well, I mean, scary movies like the original Dracula. And I spent a couple years after seeing the original Dracula at 7. I spent a couple years absolutely terrified of vampires. And I don't think that is a warranted fear. Anyway, so I think that fear is just fear, and it can be useful. And it can also not be useful. And what are some of my largest fears? I think, I can make myself look really good and say, when I was 20, one of my biggest fears was that I would live a life that was not really my life, and, live a life working a job I didn't like and doing things I didn't like. And that's true. But that's too much puffery. And I think one of my big fears is, there have been times in my life when I have made decisions that have ended up irrevocably harming another. And that is one of the worst feelings I've ever had. Like an example, it seems like, what do you mean by this? One example is, I took a blind, arthritic, old dog for a walk on railroad tracks, and she got hit by a train. It was one of the stupidest things I've ever done. And, you know, it was my mistake and her loss. And I have a horror of making mistakes that cost other people, that cause other people irreversible harm, including non-human people. And then more broadly, I don't know if, I'm not one of those woo-woo astrology people, but Sagittarians are known as the bachelor sign. I mean, that's among other things. And I have a real fear of commitment, a terror of commitment. And not just in relationships, it's just it is no wonder that I am a freelance writer and I don't like sending my books off until they're finished. I don't want to sign a contract for a book I haven't written yet because I might decide I don't want to write that book. Or if you and I were hanging out together and we said, let's go into town and get some food at a restaurant, that's great. You would say to me, which restaurant do you want to go to? I would probably say, I don't know. And then we would drive into town, and I wouldn't make my decision until we get to like the actual corner where I have to turn. Among Sagittarians, the saying is, never make a decision today that you can put off till tomorrow. And so it's interesting because this isn't like a fear like, oh my gosh, I'm scared that I'm going to get bit by a vampire. That was a fear. Or, oh my gosh, I'm scared that I'm wrapped up in my hammock and I'm going to get eaten. There aren't fears like that, but there is this just discomfort that comes with making, to make it so it's not so funny and to make it so it's sadder. I've had the same thing. Sometimes when I've had dogs or cats who are too old and they're really, really sick, I've sometimes waited a bit too long to help them die because that decision is irrevocable. And so the point is, this is not a fear that is like scary, like gets my adrenaline running, but this is a fear that has determined many of my major life choices. This fear of committing to a direction when I don't feel like I can back out. And I can commit to things and I can be committed to things. Like when I'm writing a book, once I get into the book, I'm committed to it and I'm going to finish this book. I have a built-in finish factor. But up until that moment here's part of it, I don't commit to things unless I'm sure I'm comfortable committing to them.